want to tell you a story about something. You don't have to listen, but I would like it if you did. It's a pretty important story, so I hope you don't just kind of write it off. You just listen and maybe tell your friends so they can learn a lesson or two. So, here it goes. I was walking in the city, right? I work as an accountant for a state farm. And so I was walking down the city, and I passed the streets that I pass by every day on my way to work. I live in an apartment in downtown Chicago, and so I would pass these streets and, see all my friends on my way to work, and man, God, I'm getting a little worked up just telling the story, but it's okay. I want to share it with you anyways. So, as I was walking to work, I got into the building and everything was fine. I was actually having a really good day. My soon-to-be wife just proposed to me last night, which was really great. And so I was in kind of a good mood this day. And so when I got into work, I got in and I opened the doors, and the girl who was at the counter, who usually checks us in and makes sure we aren't late, she wasn't there that day. And I was a little bit confused because I usually say hi to her every morning. And I decided to just shake it off and just go up the elevator. So I opened the elevator door and I pressed floor 37. Now, I felt it start to rise, and the little light at the top of the elevator was flashing the different numbers. 26, 27, 28, 29, and when it got to 30, I picked my suitcase back up from the floor and got ready to head out, except for it went to 38. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll just hit whatever I accidentally hit and then go back down to 37. But minutes passed and minutes turned into several minutes, and I started to worry a little bit. And now I knew that there were only 75 floors on this building, and so I thought, it can't be too bad, And so as it kept on going, it reached the 60s, 65, 66, 67, 68, and you know the next one. And all of a sudden, it hit 71, and 72, and 73, and then all of a sudden, like an airplane, just stopping midair, everything just froze. And I felt nothing, and I felt weightless, and all of a sudden I started dropping, and I felt like I was in the Tower of Terror ride at Disneyland, and I kept on falling and falling until I found myself laying on the floor. I was on the floor of the elevator, and the floor was cold, but I couldn't really feel anything. And so I stood up and brushed myself off, and I couldn't really remember anything that just happened. And so I pressed the emergency door open to see if I was still in the building, because I don't even know what happened. And I opened the door, and instead of the State Farm building, it was light, and there were trees all around me. And I didn't know where I was, and so I stepped outside, and the cold air just filled my nose and went through my body, and I realized that I was in the jungle. I didn't know why I was in the jungle or how I was in the jungle. I was in the jungle. And so I stepped outside and looked around, and and the elevator was gone. There was nothing around me except for trees and bushes, and I looked at my feet, and there's a little spider that just crawled on by, and I didn't know where I was. I was confused, but at the same time I also felt calm. And then I heard something in the distance. It sounded like people chanting, and I didn't know what it was. It was a group of people, maybe, or maybe it was monkeys, and I didn't really know what it was, and so I tried to get closer to the noise, but I couldn't figure out where it was coming from, and so I kept on walking, and all of a sudden the sky grew darker, and the trees started moving to the side, and a pathway made out of mossy stone bricks arose from the middle of the forest. And so I followed the pathway because I didn't really know what to do other than that. And I walked in on a bunch of people wearing flannels and bandanas, and I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what they were chanting, but I didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden, they all stopped, and they turned their head at me, and they were all in a circle, and everything was silent, and they were all staring at me, and I was staring back at them, and in the middle of the circle, I saw a golden bowl with water in it, and I didn't know what that was there for, but I figured I must have walked in on some sort of cult gathering or something, and I didn't know what to do, and all of a sudden, from behind me, I heard a voice, and I didn't know what it said or what it was, so I turned behind me, and then I turned back around, and everyone was gone. It was just me, with the open air and the trees, and I didn't know what to do, but I looked around, and then I heard the voice from behind me again. "Everything is okay," the voice said. "There's no need to worry." And I looked behind me, and it was a young man dressed in leaves. And he said, "I am Jungle Jesus." And I said, "What?" He said, "I am Jungle Jesus." And I said, "What?" Because the second time I didn't know what Jungle Jesus meant. If he repeats it again, he's not going to make me understand more. So I said, What do you mean? What is a Jungle Jesus?" Because I heard of what Jesus was before. I mean, who didn't know what Jesus was? But I dropped through an elevator, and I walked through the forest, and then there's this strange young man looking at me and saying everything's okay. And so I asked him, "What does that mean? What does Jungle Jesus mean?" And he said, "It's okay. Don't worry. I'm here for you." And I was confused, but after a little bit of just staring at each other, I decided there wasn't anything else for me to do. I mean, what am I going to do, go back to the elevator? So he led me into this pyramid made of stone. And when we walked inside, the ring of people from before was there. And they all started chanting one more time. "Jungle Jesus, Jungle Jesus, Jungle Jesus, Jungle Jesus." And there was a spot, a little pillow, and a gap in the ring for me to sit down. And they all gestured for me to sit down, and I did. And I sat down, and I joined in. "Jungle Jesus, Jungle Jesus, Jungle Jesus." And I was chanting, and there was a strange man with beautiful, long blonde hair in the middle who was ringing the bowl, and everyone was chanting. And all of a sudden, this sense of hope and power flowed through me as I was chanting with them. And then the strange man from before who claimed he was this jungle Jesus guy, he looked at me, and everyone stopped. And he said, "It's okay. Everything's okay." And he put his hand out, and I reached up for him. I took his hand, and everything in my vision went white. And I didn't know what to do. Everything my life flashed before my eyes, and all of a sudden, I was the young man staring down at some State Farm employee who was sitting on a mat. And so I said to myself, "Is everything okay? What's happening?" And the State Farm employee below me just said, "Everything's gonna be okay." And everyone in the circle started chanting again, but this time even louder and louder. And everything just started swirling. The world was turning, and they all raised their hands and gestured for me to sit at this throne that was at the back of the pyramid. And so I walked over and I sat down, and then all of a sudden everything went black. And I opened my eyes and I saw a monitor and a mouse and a keyboard. And I looked around and I was on floor 37 of the State Farm building. And I knew it wasn't a dream. I knew all of that had just happened. I still felt it. The cold air was still in my body, and I looked over and everyone was there. But instead of wearing their State Farm outfits like they usually were, they were all wearing flannels and bandanas. And I would question it normally. I don't usually, just accept these things. I'm not the type of person to do that. But I felt so much more power and enlightenment, within me. And so I looked at the clock, and sure enough, it was 5. And it was time to go home. So I picked up my suitcase and got in the elevator one more time, and it glided smoothly right down to ground floor. And, well, that's the whole thing. That's the whole goddamn story. As sure as my name is Jungle Jesus.